and this is the first example of what that close collaboration looks like. So it's kind of interesting. We've been doing this for a long time now. 8 years we've been working on this, but we are only realizing that the buildings we're making in this collaboration is only now coming out and being shown. So I think there's a great opportunity here to see what that brings. The point about having two companies is to be able to look at the same problems in different ways. So 3XN runs as an architecture company, has to take risks in competitions, and then manage those risks towards a finished building. There's a lot of innovation and research happening, but there's also a lot of stuff you don't get to do at that scale, right? Because if you mess up on that roof, you're asking somebody potentially to go out of business, right? So you're not experimenting with new materials and all sorts of things there. And that was the initial idea with GXN. We were spun out to do all the stuff we couldn't do at the commercial scale, to learn and understand about new materials, new technologies, trends we thought were interesting, follow the same problem across projects. Susan does a lot of work around behavior and architecture, thinking about how architecture informs the human, and being able to follow that focus throughout a bunch of projects means we build up a knowledge capacity, right? And so I guess we had our teenage years and had to go away a little bit and learn for ourselves and make our own mistakes and mature understanding, and then come back into the fold here now. And increasingly we're working very close with 3XN on the different projects. And as Kim was saying, this was the first project where the team was 3XN, GXN. It also comes with a ton of challenges. If you're creating a roof like this, you want to make sure you can actually build it on time and on budget. Thank you very much, right? So that was something that we got to look at from the get-go with GXN, looking at design to fabrication already in the competition phase, optimizing the roof, getting these cassettes, minimizing the amount of different cassettes we would have. These cassettes are 9 by 5 meters. Minimizing the amount of these cassettes we would have to have so we could build it. Thinking about rainwater. We live in Denmark. We think we know rainwater, but when we started looking into those surrounding conditions, we realized that when it rains, it really pours. And so thinking about how to get the rain off that roof became a big issue to consider. And as we were starting to look at how to shape the roof to get the rain off, some people realized, well, if we are leading the rain away anyway, why not collect it? So the roof is acting as a rainwater harvesting collecting point, along with the landscape around. That rain then goes into these underground feeding systems where we're cleaning the water with the biofiltering system, so filtering, natural biofiltering. And the calculation is that in this first market, we'll be able to make sure that 70% of the water used, so this is sufficient, so it's a lot of water, 70% of that water used is going to be recycled water from the landscape. So I think that that's an example of what it brings to have, of course, fantastic architects thinking about functionality and design and creating something that's really striking. And adding these layers of thinking about functionality, sustainability, and other things on top of it. And I think a lot of the buildings and projects we're going to talk about today has that dual way of looking at the same problem, which is how do we create architecture that's fit for 21st century challenges and for the people that need to use it, that can evolve over time and that respond to the local context in interesting ways. And that's really what we're working across the studio as architects, as researchers in GXN, behavioral specialists, engineers.
Can I add a little bit to the you talked about the fish market? They have 500 different species of fish in the harbor industry that you can actually visit. Today everything is containers, but this is actually something you can come and see in real life. The building is nearly finished. It will open up for the traders to come in here 9th November, and then they'll have a hopefully.
at GXN, and it's my pleasure to host you and moderate this discussion this afternoon. So the premise of the Copenhagen Biennale this year is that by slowing down in this age of acceleration, we give ourselves time to think and an opportunity to really experiment with, not just within design and architecture, but more broadly at a societal level. So today we have invited Mette from CITA, Mette from Spora, and our very own Kåre from 3XN GXN, three quite distinctive voices from different fields, diverse backgrounds, to discuss how waste can become a starting point for something new. A new starting point for innovation, for beauty, and for cultural transformation. I would like to first introduce Mette Ramsgaard Thomsen. She's a professor and the director for the Centre for IT and Architecture Research Group, CITA, as most of us are probably familiar with, at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, School of Architecture, Design and Conservation. She is also currently the Kret Chair Professor of Practice in the Department of Architecture at Weitzman School of Design at the University of Pennsylvania. That's a lot of words, I hope we got that right.
One of the things we've been very curious about in CITA over the last years is how we think about the way we build and what a building material can be. I think one of the things that have been challenging for us is really trying to understand how we can go from a sense of discrete systems that are separate from each other, tectonic logic where we add one material, stick the next material on, and we can find a more fluid relationship to how these materials might be changing their performance, and changing the way that they are structured, and the way that they are fabricated, and the way that they create space. A lot of timber construction, timber is understood as one of the sole building materials that is truly sustainable. But we also know that the pressure that the building with timber does on our ecosystems is very radical. So one of the things that we were doing very early on, maybe 5 years ago, is we went to visit a very large forest up in northern Sweden in something called Sava. It's not at the polar circle, close to it. I've been there a couple of times. It feels like you're going to sort of Swedish Lilliput land. There's only trees and snow, and it's very beautiful. And so we went to visit this forest up there, and what we were learning there is really how, when we say we want to build with timber, how that impacts the ecosystems. And so what we've been curious to is really wondering, how could we think about biomaterials but beyond timber? So what are these other kind of biosystems that we could work with as a way of working with a local resource, and to be able to think of them as being part of the environment that we are participating in here. So this led us to work with a lot of different kinds of biopolymers. Biopolymer is a fancy word for bioplastic, and we brought some here also. They're all made of the same material, and here we are cooking away. So they're all made of materials that have a binder. The binder we've been working with are different kinds of alginates. That's why we're really interested in all these different kinds of aquatic bioresource, but also xanthan gum, as we were talking about, which is a lactose material, and also pea protein that we've been working with. So collagen from bones from cows. So what's interesting about that is that instead of having like timber, concrete, glass, stone, then we start getting this ingredients or recipe logic where you have a spectra of materials, and I can exactly alchemically add a bit of this, or I ran out of that, so I'll put this in, and I can create these materials that are much more flexible in their understanding about where they come from. So here in Rhizerial, we're working with collagen glue. Collagen glue is bovine, so it's from cows. We very naively thought that collagen, so many cows, there must be so much collagen all over. But actually, every time you eat a pot of noodle or other wonderful products, it's all bone. So what we learned also is that we're mixing them here, we're putting them together with eelgrass and bark and wood flour. These are all cellulosic resources coming out of either residual or waste streams, which means that we can build with them. You can also see we 3D print with it. The reason we 3D print is that all these materials have a lot of water in them, and they need this porosity to be able to get rid of the water again. How we could start building with that. Now, obviously, they cannot compete with, and don't want to compete with, neither concrete or timber as such. They have their own performances. They have different longevities, different lifespans, and it makes us consider what it means to build with a weaker material. Do we need to build a bit fatter? No, things have to be a bit more chunky. Or do we need to build for shorter time spans? Do we accept that things go into disrepair? Does that mean that we need to continuously move with materials and reconstruct with materials? So what we're looking at here is also the collaboration that we've been doing with 3XN and GXN, where we've been specifically working with mussels, blue mussels and white mussels. These mussels are ground down, they are mixed with alginate. Here we look at a bread mixer, so it literally is food technology that we're doing. We cast the tiles, they're here, and we CNC them to be able to sort of establish a language and think about how it could be. What we were interested in is then to try to understand what is the relationship to the actual materials on site. What do mussels do? And we had this wonderful collaboration and visit at Havhøst, which is a fantastic organization here in Copenhagen, all over Denmark. And they work with mussels to remediate. The mussels are natural filters. They're little bioengineers. They live in the water and they filter the water, and they eat all the particles in the water, and as they eat them, they excrement it again, and it becomes heavier. And that little extra weight makes it fall down through the water and settle on the ground, which is really great for all the benthic zone animal and fauna, and it clears out the water, which means that plants can grow again. So could we think, okay, can architecture participate in these cycles? And we think about that when we build, we are supporting, enhancing, enriching the ecologies that we participate in.
Spora is a global food research centre founded as an evolution of the creative and scientific work at the restaurant Alchemist here in Copenhagen, not that far from the office actually. It focuses on experimentation-driven, multidisciplinary research, where the pursuit of deliciousness guides technology development. Spora addresses critical food system challenges through gastronomy and applied science. Over to you, Jensen.
I also wanted to start by sharing a small video from the restaurant, The Alchemist, because I think it's a very nice way of sharing with you what we are bringing together to create the experience that Alchemist is, that kind of goes beyond the plate and beyond the food. And it's also the creative universe that Spora is building on, so I think that's a sort of a good, nice start to explain what we're working on. how can we create an extraordinary experience that goes beyond the plate, and also a starting point for communicating and stories, and also bringing up topics that bring new conversations to the table as you dine. And some of these stories can be provocative, and some of them can be suggestive, and some of them can also be related to some of these challenges that we see in the world and related to sustainability. And that's also how Spora got started. It was kind of born in the behind the scenes of Alchemist, where we saw that universities and companies became very interested in this approach and what we were doing, and this the creative universe that it represented. I wanted to collaborate to do something that went beyond the restaurant and more into to research for the future and into mainstream foods. And that was our starting point for asking ourselves how gastronomy could truly have an impact beyond the restaurant, beyond the plate, and start to contribute on a grander scale to a more sustainable food system of the future. And also take a lot of that creativity, which is already present in restaurants in general. So you have this avant-garde cuisine. They not only come up with wonderful things on your plate, but there's a lot of work behind in terms of creating new materials, new processes, new recipes. And some of that can really be beneficial to the rest of us on an everyday basis if we can bring it out at scale and make it available to all of us. So that's what we're trying to do, to work to develop new technologies, new creative tweaks. That means that we can bring something new to us in the future that's joyful, delicious, always delicious first, but then also sustainable and healthy. So that's a big creative challenge. One of the areas that we really double down on is waste, in particular side streams from industry. And it's we think that's really a wonderful thing to work on. It's a big challenge, we know that, and we know there's a lot in the food system. There's a lot of food waste, and it has a huge impact. It's a lot of wasted land use. It's a lot of CO2. It sometimes is a threat to biodiversity and so on. So we can, if we can address that, we can really achieve a lot. And I'm holding an example here of a waste product that we're working on. I assume you would associate this with food. It doesn't look like food you would eat. It isn't either. It's the spent grains you have left after you have extracted the sugars for beer brewing. So you take malt for brewing, you boil it up and you extract all the sugars, and you then add the yeast, and then you brew a beer. But then you have tons and tons of materials left, 40 million tons globally of this material. That is used for feed, because as humans it's too much indigestible fiber for us to really get any nutritional benefit of this. But we are treating it in a way, we're transforming it so that it becomes edible to humans. Just a chocolate alternative. So we have worked here to sort of think through all the aspects of the chocolate experience. Now, you might ask, why do I want to bring you something else than chocolate? Chocolate is wonderful, we love chocolate. The chocolate is great and wonderful. However, you've probably also seen the prices in the supermarket. It's almost like there's a lock on the marble now, if you want to get that. Because the raw materials costs have gone up, actually from $2,500 per ton of cocoa beans to $10,000 to $12,000 per ton. So there's a really radical increase in price to us. It's not something that has come, at least yet, to the benefit of the farmers. It's in the intermediate steps that price increase is captured. And the reason that some of the reasons that prices are increasing, there's of course an element of speculation in it, but it's also because harvest is bad due to climate change, due to underinvestments in farms and so on. So we're also looking into a future where cocoa might stay a more scarce resource and not actually meet the cravings we have for chocolate. They're not going to go away either in the future.
At 3XN GXN, Kåre focuses on research and innovation in the built environment. Exploring a research-led approach can enrich architecture, the environment and business, and what this means for design strategy. Take it away.
Quite a mouthful. Yes, so thank you, Mette and Mette. I thought I was going to take up the challenge and try and convince you today in the next 10 minutes that concrete is if not as delicious as what we achieved from Mette, at least as interesting and holds the same potential for innovation at different scales. So why do we talk about concrete? Well, in GXN we are interested in moving the needle in the built environment as a whole, create buildings that perform better for the environment but also performing better for people. And therefore a material like concrete is such a key thing for us to look at. Concrete is the second most abundant material on the planet, the second most used material on the planet. If you're talking about chemical processes and turning something that's very low value into higher value, it's a great place to start. A lot of concrete is tied up in buildings like this, housing and commercial buildings from the 60s, 70s and 80s that seem somewhat past its prime, and a lot of time is being torn down. And when this is being torn down, the concrete is being crushed. The concrete is being crushed, it's not really utilized, we lose 90% of its value, and we have to create new concrete and new cement, and the cement production produces a ton of CO2. It's about 4 to 8% of global CO2 emissions that comes from cement production, right? So can we do it smarter when we're looking at this? So we've been researching with a lot of industry partners over the last couple of years, looking into these types of buildings in Denmark and beyond, understanding how they've been constructed. The interesting part about these buildings is that they're all built from the same techniques and materials. They represent a real revolution in how we did construction in the 50s. The turn towards automated construction, which means that actually a lot of these buildings are the same, which also means that when we get to the demolition side, we kind of know already what's in there and how it's put together and what state it's in. And so for this project, we took a couple of case study buildings, checked them out, got the concrete out, managed to test the pressure, the strength of these. They're all good, by the way, the concrete blocks that we looked into. Tested them for different types of hazardous chemicals, which there are none of. Started looking into how we might reuse these in design. And then the actual problems start. So if you want to reuse concrete elements, you gotta get them out of the buildings. You gotta actually get them out and be able to take them without breaking them. So this is one of the first instances of that. This is maybe 4 or 5 years ago when we were working with demolition contractors on a project. We got to go there, instruct them in how we expected them to take them off, and then try to salvage them on the side. And during a whole day of construction and demolition, we managed to take those 3 pieces there out. One of them, as you can see, is broken. It's maybe not that great. Next day, when we called these guys and we started to organize logistics, there was a new foreman on site, and he had thrown them out with the rest of the waste, because why would they lying around anyway? So there's a few logistical challenges. You need to sort of do that on chemical transformation also in the people that are actually doing the hands-on part of the construction. It doesn't matter that we have great ideas as architects. We cannot communicate it and get the people excited around this. Luckily, we are working with a lot of very good and interesting demolition contractors. This is Schønherr, another company, and they've really taken up the challenge. So what they can do now with these end effectors and grabs is quite amazing. So on this picture here, the driver of this big crane has grabbed a piece of what's called randermering. This is the rebar that lies around where the concrete meets the slabs, where the slabs on the sides meet, and basically take it off as a zipper, and free up those element slabs that are up there, and now we can take them out. So we managed to salvage quite a few of this. And so over a couple of years of working with these guys, they've built up a whole methodology now for how to take out slabs and salvage them in ways that they can be reused. We also done this at very large scale, so this is a demolition of a housing block in Aarhus, where we managed to salvage 53 elements in total. So these were cut out here, so not lifted out, we really needed them for something else. Lifted down, brought back home to a concrete manufacturer, checked, everything was good again. We did also check quite a bit of this on the technical side, looking at breaking strength, looking at the tensile strength and so on, and these are still working fine. And then building them back into projects. So this is a 3XN GXN project built for a demolition contractor called Charlie. The theme here, as I think you can sort of see, is to transform an old industrial hangar type building into a new office for these guys, utilizing only materials from their own demolitions. So they managed to salvage all this stuff, work these ways in, and of course it changes the game a little bit for the architects, starting working with what's already there, and working with whatever's coming in when somebody calls and say, hey, I got these 20 railings, can we start using them for something? It's a bit of a different situation, and comes with other types of stress, I would say, for the architects and usual construction. Yes, there's some examples of that. I mean, we also managed to build some of these elements back home from where they came from. So this is back in Aarhus where we pulled them out. They're being built in here into new row houses that are being set here. This was what's remarkable here is how like this is to a normal way of constructing. There's nothing fancy, nothing different going on here. For these guys here, it was a total normal day on the building site, except for the fact that there was maybe 25 architects and engineers standing here, snapping pictures like crazy as they were putting these in, right? But they were delivered from a concrete manufacturer in just the same way as they would be normally, and built in the same way, and getting that loop. So something that looks deceptively simple and should be quite simple, right? But getting to there has taken 3 or 4 or 5 years of work with a lot of industry partners, which is kind of exciting to us to get into that sort of aspect. Here they are, new ones, old ones. You can decide whether you think it's a feature or what they look like this, but at least they got some character, and you can sort of start talking about whether there's a new aesthetics coming in with this. The concrete manufacturers were very enamored with these old elements. Apparently you don't make them like in the old days anymore, so they were quite excited to see them. At a different scale, not working with precast elements, we are right now working on a project in London where we are looking at transforming a large tower that is well past its prime and not really working very well. Here all the concrete is in situ casts, and we've been working with the local developer there to see if we could actually sample some elements of this, cut them out with a diamond cut like this, lift them out, get them tested breaking strength. What you cannot see here is that before the element broke, the floor underneath the machine here broke, basically, so the concrete is doing quite well. The team here of the architects have then been developing these conceptual designs for how that might fit back into a building, how that might become aspirational and a feature in these new buildings, which I think again is quite an exciting thing to see. So that's sort of one scale. I mean, the other scale that we're then working on, which gets a little bit closer to what we've seen from Mette and Mette, is thinking about if there's alternative ways of working with concrete. So cement production is the key sinner in CO2 emissions in concrete, and we're working with a startup company here called Biomason that grows cement. So what that means is that they've got a proprietary mix of bacteria they can pour into a form with aggregate, and the bacteria's metabolism, they're eating and excellent. It basically calcifies that aggregate. It creates strong binders between those pieces of the aggregate and creates cement in this way. So we've been working with them to create a, right now you can get that in tiles about this size. So we're working with them on a project to see what would happen if we scaled this up and if we could create a column that we could use for an exhibition. So here you cast the form, you get the aggregate in, pour in the special mix and basically leave it in the oven for 72 hours. The key thing here is that oven is 32 degrees warm and not 2,000 degrees warm, so your CO2 emissions are quite negligible. And out comes a column which we within, oh, sorry, can we turn the sound off? There was an internal joke for the first time we did this where these guys obviously look like the monkeys in space. Space obviously here you have the obelisk, but so there it is in the exhibition. And a few things from that. And then that collaboration has led into a final collaboration I just want to flag here because we've got Mette from CITA here, and this is one where we started working some of these themes together. This is the Venice Biennale from this year where we did an installation looking at different very locally produced materials, looking at local material streams and how to turn that into cladding elements for at the architectural scale. Mette did a lot of interesting work with her team around using biopolymers from these invasive traps. We were also looking at utilizing these biomason stones, creating a sort of concrete facade or bioconcrete facade in here, and working with local techniques from Cuba, for pound front weaving, which will also find its way into one of these sides. So there's quite a lot of different ways of attacking the same problem of what do we do with all this concrete that's already out there and all the concrete that we need to pour out there in the coming years. That the challenges are not necessarily where you expect them to be. There's always somebody like this, and sometimes you have an idea who that is, and sometimes you'll find them. And when you found them, you can spend several months trying to get around this sort of thing. And there's people I haven't seen without their arms like up here, right? And so moving from that experimental idea and into the scale of a project, thinking about how might we take off a piece of facade and use that in our new building. you run into this character, and that character starts asking a lot of questions about, well, is the building insured if you take up a pen? Probably is, but that took 2 months to figure out. You know, who can use this, where do we go, all these kind of things. So I think what's exciting there is that the experiment goes on within the bounds of the project, so we meet all the challenges that we will meet, that we don't really get to see in the same way when we're working on a pure research project.
You know what is, and this idea of waste, the theme of the whole thing is in nature there is no waste. I think waste is a very modern concept. You know, our grandparents, the parents of our grandparents, they did not have waste in the same way that we do. And so I think we have become the world we have become very, very recently, and we will become the world we will be in very short time. So we're in this very sped up time, and I think the arms up like that, it could also be transferred to our inability to look beyond our own sort of horizon.
The studio here is based both in Copenhagen and in Aarhus, the second largest town in Denmark. And we are, in total, we are around 35 landscape architects and planners working together. Then the studio is led by Ram and Nina Jensen and Rasmus Nyegaard. And the studio is actually more than 40 years old. It was founded back in 1984 by Schønherr. Our work and our services range from planning and programming to biodiversity and climate adaptation, tourism and accessible landscapes and urban spaces, and also energy and infrastructure. All these challenges that you all know of, from climate change to urban development that we just talked about outside before, our cities are getting hotter and our ecosystems are challenged, and there of course also scarcity of resources and so on. So one of the major big challenges that we are all facing at the moment is the changing climate, and I think you all come from different countries where you have experienced floodings or issues, or maybe also droughts or erosion or something that similar, that are all related to issues of climate change and how it affects the water cycle. So our approach to this challenge is to take a step backward, and in this way it's very much related to the theme of the Biennale, Slow Down. Beauty for us is about caring for our landscapes and environments and cities, and also to create qualitative solutions, and sustainability is about creating durable solutions that can withstand time and that are also adaptable to change. That was developed for the Architecture Biennial in Venice, and it's a vision for how to adapt Copenhagen region to the changing climate. When you are to read the landscape of Denmark, it always goes back to the Ice Age, because Denmark was shaped very much by the Ice Age. This part of Amager here, the big island south of Copenhagen, was reclaimed in the 1940s, so it used to be seabed here, so it has really changed the landscape of Copenhagen. And as you can see, the harbor has been more become more and more narrow over the years. It used to be, a lot of smaller islands, very shallow water, but the landscape used to look very different. And the thing is that oftentimes the water remembers the old landscape. We also talked about that just before about Milan, where the water remembers the old channels, and it's the same in Copenhagen, that the lower lying areas, or where there used to be bogs or streams, that is where we're experiencing floodings. And the thing is that there's a lot of urban development currently that is planned around these very low-lying areas. So the idea was to do something different. And 10 years ago, the city of Copenhagen and Frederiksberg developed a big master plan for all of Copenhagen in relation to water, where the water should be retained and where it should be, how it should be led to the harbor and other receiving water bodies. And from that big plan, the municipality has pointed out where to start, and this is one of the projects. Yeah, so the water is led through the new channel here in this green corridor and led out to the harbor area. The early climate adaptation projects in Denmark from 2017, which is addressing climate adaptation in the social housing area. So making using the water as a visible element in the public spaces, and also using the water as a vehicle for enhancing the quality of the spaces between the buildings. And here, of course, public involvement has also been key. And then I know you visited the Carlsberg area, and so so we have been responsible for some of the public spaces here, also in relation to climate adaptation. And as you then know, it's a very dense area, so the challenge here was to create double functions. Creating space for the water to be detained, but at the same time also giving these spaces other functions. And then of course it is also about respecting the historical context. As you can see here, maybe you passed by this project as well. It's both a football court and then also a detention basin for heavy rainwater. And this is a project that was finished 1 year ago in Horsens in Jutland, not far from Aarhus, which is a big crafts college. So it's a college for for example, woodworkers and carpenters and masons. Here the water is used as a recreational spatial element. These water features here collects rainwater as well. So this is an example of how you can also use it as a visual element that creates the spaces and is an integrated part of the architecture. It is a project that has won many prizes. The buildings are designed by Coopenhagen architects. And then the final project here that I'll show you is also a vision project that is called the Vandets Veje. So it's a project that addresses how to recreate what used to be the second largest lake in Denmark, called Kolindsund, that is located in Jutland. So it was the second largest lake, and it was then drained 150 years ago, when a lot of lakes and wetlands were drained in Denmark in order to create new land for agriculture. But then, during these 150 years, the production landscape of agriculture has become part of our cultural heritage. So we look into how to integrate the challenge of climate change and environmental crisis and nature crisis, and the need for producing food for and in that sense, we look at it as a new type of nature. Here you can see the outline of the old lake, and the idea is then that it is gradually becoming a wetter landscape, but then also, but not the old landscape that used to be there 150 years ago, but a new landscape.
You take that into consideration whenever you plan your next 15-minute city or whatever is the talk of the town at the moment. I really like the thought of a 15-minute city where you can get everything from work, healthcare, recreation, whether it's green or blue spaces, that we have this focus on how do we develop a city with livability. And I know that we've been famous for it for years, but that livability comes with a responsibility for us to keep having that, keep doing that, keep having the focus that this is the city we want for the rest of the world. I'm going to look at Lars, that you all met probably. That is Lars's job to actually put that into action and to preserve that vision for everything. I will leave you with a quote that I also used when we had the other architectural year last year, and that is, I will take you to my favorite NASA astronomist. Her name is Vera Rubins. She was the first woman to work in NASA, and she said, don't shoot for the stars, we already know what's there. Shoot for the spaces in between. That's where all the mystery lies. And to me, whenever an architect or a city developer has to develop or build, draw, come up with something new, it's about the spaces in between, because that is where the mystery lies. That is where you can actually develop new things that fits in with what it already is. So with that, I hope so much that you will come up with better cities, better city plans, and better buildings for the future. And I will finish up with the things that have been running in the background, and that is for hundreds of years, or at least 100 years, this city have actually celebrated buildings, all the spaces in between. We have a ceremony called Building Awards, and the jury comprises of architects, politicians, so I was just going to say ordinary people, and I mean that. So every year we gather with the Culture and Leisure Department and architects and other specialists, and we look at buildings, spaces, saying what do we want, what projects do we actually want to reward this year. So this year it was health and energy smart renovations, it was using historical colors and crafts, linking mobility and art in the passing journeys. It was changing the use of historical building to houses, dance and community, combining climate proofing with green areas, and my favorite this year was turning a 70s office building into a cafe, studio, debate stage that despite a lot of obstacles actually recycled as much as possible from the original building, turning it into stairways and not using new materials, leaving some of them really raw, which my aesthetic eye, I visited, kind of disliked a little bit, but I accepted it for the fact that it was so refurbished. So this is my words to you guys for saying thank you for being here, thank you for wanting to spend your time inspiring all of us to actually build better cities. I am going to give the word to Josephine in a little bit.
an exhibition made in collaboration with the Form Design Center in Malmö, showcasing projects working at the intersection of art and architecture. And yesterday, we unveiled 2 forward-thinking pavilions built with recycled and reused materials from up-and-coming architects from the Nordic countries. And they're just a few minutes away from here. You should go and see them. Gamle Strand and Sarkik was blessed. And yesterday too, we opened the doors for Assemble, Europe's new conference on architectural politics. That's why I'm so thrilled to have you, our international guests, some of you, here today, and to have Copenhagen as the stage where our meeting takes place. I will now hand the stage to our rather new city architect, Lars Jensen, who's been very supportive of the biennial as well. Thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to see some of you to our more than 250 events taking place over the next month. Thank you again, and once again, to come and celebrate this house.
Copenhagen is a city of 660,000 people. That's the municipality of Copenhagen. We're part of a greater metropolitan area, which contains around 2 million people, and then the whole region, which includes the southern part of Sweden, we have 4.4 million people. So to some extent, the Copenhagen is a small city, but within a larger region. We have an average age of 37 years, but it's growing, and we're getting older. I'm going to get back to that. So what we maybe not talk so much about or depict in our tourist brochures is the whole fringe around the city, which is dominated by welfare society projects such as affordable housing, schools, sports facilities, and that plays a huge role in the understanding of the present Copenhagen, the welfare society being an engine on development over the last 50 years. Then this is maybe more my interpretation. I think we're a city of unified variations, and just to explain what I mean about that is that we have a strong, at least we have a history of hosting a lot of different cultures, of different people, of different incomes. This is being threatened at the moment because we have growing prices on real estate. So this is part of the DNA that is maybe weakened a little bit. We are in danger of becoming a kind of a retro for the wealthy, with all the disbenefits of that. But through the variation, the variation stuff is not only on the social, it's also on architecture, obviously, on urban spaces. We have, again, this time depth. We have also seen over the last 3 decades a lot of uniform buildings being built in the city. I'm a little bit critical about that, also looking into the future with the accelerating of development that we're probably going to see. How can we still maintain a varied and diverse city? That's actually a challenge that we have. I think people are proud in Copenhagen that we're a livable city, and we're also proud of let's say, the reasons why we have a stable society. We have a good healthcare and so forth. Again, it's a welfare city that actually that brought us here. And my point is, it's not something we invented yesterday. This is due to the fact that we did strategies and visions 50 years ago, that we spent a lot of time and effort on building. So if we want to maintain the fact of being a livable city, we need to do new business for the future. Mostly due to the fact of our behavior. So we basically eat too much meat, buy too much on the internet, fly too many times to Mallorca, and do whatever we want. So again, under the fact of being a very livable city, there's also a kind of effect of that, and that is, they play together at least, the fact that we have a huge overconsumption in the city, and we try to work with that. Maybe the question is, how can we maintain the welfare of Copenhagen, the quality of the city, while becoming less, let's say, respecting planetary borders. That's basically the biggest challenge that we are facing right now. To me, it's very important as well, the new metro line forward to South Harbour, where we actually worked in close collaboration with artists on decorating the stages, and I think the artist's role in the future of Copenhagen cannot be underestimated. We also need the artistic view on the city development. So, browsing up on that, or wrapping up on that, that is my view upon the DNA of Copenhagen. So, thank you very much.